First things first, I just want to let you know, this nose ring is absolutely fake. Doesn't it look great on me? Like, don't you think I should have a nose ring? Like Jenna nose ring era 2022? So we're here. We made it. I know it was a really hard time to get here, but long story short, we survived. It's the end of 2021. Thank fucking God. It's the end of the year, which means it's your favorite time of year because we're talking about my favorite books of 2021. I have done this pretty consistently since 2013, I think, which is absolutely wild to me. It's been 8 years. I've been doing this for a long time now. And even though it may not seem like it, I have actually read a lot of books this year. For those who are unaware, I started out the year hoping to read about 120 books. And then after a really strong January, I was like, I could do 200, upped my goal to 200, was on track to hit 200 books read by about I was on track until about June or July. Read 100 and so books in 6 months. And then around 4th of July, I just decided I was never going to read another book in my life. And I haven't read one since. So I've read 102 books this year, but I haven't read a book since July. So take that as you will. But because of that, I actually have a pretty long list of books that I want to talk about today. I can't remember how many, like 25 maybe? Oops. I have read so many incredible books this year, and part of that is because I had a goal going into the year to read like as diversely and variety filled as possible. Is that the right phrase? I don't even know. I really wanted to read a wide range of books, not just like diversify my reading in the sense of like, let's read more authors of color, let's read more queer writers. Like, yes, absolutely, that was on the list. But also like, I realized that it's not as fun to read the same kind of book over and over again. And so I really wanted to branch out and do like a lot more nonfiction and different media, like more poetry, more graphic novels, a lot more webtoons, audiobooks, non-audiobooks. Like, I just wanted to have as variety filled as possible. And part of that is because I was actually tracking on an Excel sheet this year, which I may or may not make a video about because I think it's actually kind of cool. But because of that, my like list of books is really all over the place. Like, there's a lot of different genres and types of books, and hopefully a lot more diverse writers and authors, you know. But overall, I'm just like really excited about my reading year this year because even though it only lasted for about 6 months, it was like a really good 6 months. Like, I really hit it, and I read so many amazing books, and I am so excited to get to talk to you guys about them today. So buckle up because we got a lot to talk about. So we're going to start at the bottom. I believe, based on my list, there are 25 books in here. I don't own all of them, so they won't all be physically shown to you, but I own a lot of them. And also I stole some from my roommate. It's fine. So the first book I want to talk about is A Million Junes by Emily Henry. This is kind of at the bottom of my list, but I really wanted to talk about it because it's so good. This book is heavily influenced by grief, so if you are struggling with grief and you kind of want to heal from that, I think this is a really great book. I have been going through a lot of grief, obviously, in the last year, but this is a YA book, and it is a kind of like fabulism, not magical realism, but fabulism. It's YA and it's a little bit magical, but like not really in the way you'd expect. And it's kind of romantic, kind of sweet. I absolutely loved the audiobook. I listened to Emily Henry books on audiobook because Julia Whalen, love of my life. But like literally, this is a really good book and I don't know what else to say about it. Next book on our list is The Black Flamingo. This is a book that came out, I believe, a couple years ago, and it was like really, really big. And I was like, that's a cool book, I should read it. And then I didn't. And this year I finally picked it up. I think I read it on audio. See, this is the problem. Number one, I have a bad memory to begin with. And number two, it's been 6 months since I thought about any of these books. But I just want to let you know, I really love The Black Flamingo. I think I cried at the end, actually, because it's about drag and being black and being queer. And it just like, so good. More people should read it. Similarly, number 23, All Boys Aren't Blue. This is kind of like, I believe it's a memoir. It's YA. It's so beautiful. And I also think I cried. I think part of it also has to do with some grief stuff too. If you need to know anything about me, pretty much make a book about grief of any sort and it'll get to me because I love I love grief. Is that a thing I just said? I just enjoy stories about grief because I'm still learning how to process grief in my life. And so reading this book, it's like queer, and it's about grief, and it's about masculinity, and it's just like really beautiful, and I would highly recommend it. Number 22 on my list is kind of a series, kind of not. I mean, it is a series. It's Monstrous. So I don't know if you know. Monstrous is my favorite graphic novel series. I've been following it for a couple of years now, and pretty much my favorite thing is that every year we get a new installment, and then I'll like reread the series up until that point, read the new installment, whatever. This year I was actually 2 installments behind, and since then, like, the 6th volume has come out. So I read 4 and 5 for the first time this year. 6 is out. I haven't read it. I'm waiting to get it. I want to get it so badly. But this is actually probably my favorite of the series so far, volume 4. If you haven't picked it up yet, it is really intense. It's not for everybody. I would describe it as like Princess Mononoke, but as a graphic novel, and also not better, but like more complex. And I just am so obsessed with where the story is going. I think it has really beautiful characters. It's queer. It's written by a woman of color. It's beautifully designed. Like, the graphics are so lovely. It's really just like a great series. It's really incredible. And I would highly recommend it to anybody, always. This is You Exist Too Much by Zaina Arafat. I totally butchered that. I apologize. This is a really incredible find by me, actually. I found it one day while I was strolling through Barnes & Noble, and I was like, wow, like, that cover is stunning. Like, what is it about? It's actually about a bisexual 26-year-old woman who is Palestinian American. Hello? I believe she's 26. She might be 25, somewhere in there. But like, literally when I read the blurb, I was like, first of all, why is nobody talking about this? Second of all, that sounds freaking insane and amazing. And so I picked it up, and it actually, like, not to say I was surprised, but like, a lot of times when you pick things up randomly at Barnes & Noble, they don't turn out to be that good. This was actually incredible. I made my roommate read it, and she loves it too. It's just like really, really addicting. It's about this young woman who has like a weird, I love addiction, sex addiction, somewhere in there. It kind of reminded me of My Year of Rest and Relaxation. Different font, also better. But like similar vibes to that sort of thing of like, oh, I'm in my mid-20s, I'm having a crisis, what do I do? Also, I'm gay, I don't know what to do. And you add on top of it the Palestinian American aspect, and it just was like really, really cool. And I think everybody should pick it up because it's just like really well written, but obsessed, love it. Number 20 is Summerbird Blue by Akemi Don Bowman, and this book, I picked it up at the beginning of the year. I read it because there's an ace character in it, and I've been meaning to read it for years and years. And it was so good. My favorite thing about it is it's about grief, shocking. But because of that, it actually focuses on a different side of grief than most books. I feel like a lot of books focus on like the sad aspects and like you miss that person and you're mourning, and that's important. But this book is a lot angrier. It's about what happens when you're mad, either at somebody for leaving you or at somebody for not supporting you through your grief. And so it's about asexuality, and it's about music, but it's also just about like being so upset and angry about your grief and learning how to cope with that and process that. And I have never really been angry with my grief for the most part, but I really, really appreciated this aspect of the book, and I think it's really touching because of that, and it's one of my favorite looks at grief, especially in YA. I would highly recommend it. 19, A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. So this book is marketed as like a lesbian dark academia, or at least like a femme dark academia, and it, I got an arc of this book, so I read it before it came out, and quite literally, like when I started it from the first page, I was like, oh, this is it. This is gonna be different. I'm excited for this. I'm obsessed with dark academia. It's probably my favorite genre, if I'm being honest with everybody. I think it takes a lot of hard work to write a successful dark academia book, and this book absolutely did that. I think it left a little bit to be desired just overall, because I am very difficult to please when it comes to dark academia. But I think as a YA, as a queer dark academia, like it hit all the right notes, and the characters are really strong, and I absolutely love the plot twists at the end. Like, it just was really, really great. And I think the writing was actually one of the strong points of it. It just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And also, I believe it starts out with, It starts out with a reference to Hill House, I believe. Is that right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it starts out with an epigraph from The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. So like literally from page 1, I was sold. It was great. I would highly recommend you pick this up. Number 18 is A Man Called Uva by Frederick Bachman. This is the first Frederick Bachman and only Frederick Bachman that I've read. And I picked it up at the beginning, like one of the first books I read of the year. And I remember reading it because I was sitting in my room listening to the audiobook and I just like cried. Like literally I was fine. And then the epilogue happened and I just bawled because once again, it's a book about grief. But this book is about an old man who basically is dealing with the loss of his wife. And from the beginning of the novel, this isn't a spoiler, he is suicidal. So strong trigger warning for that. But he spends most of the book like every day he wakes up being like, okay, this is the day that I'm going to kill myself. And every single day he either comes up with a reason not to, or he meets somebody who's like, I need you to like do this thing for me tomorrow so you can't die. And so as a result, he like gets more and more disgruntled about it. And he gets very mad that like he can't go join his wife in the afterlife because everybody on earth actually needs him and wants him around. And so it's like really sweet, but also it's kind of a call out because I am the old man on some days, you know? It was a little too relatable and I definitely cried at the end, but I would highly recommend it. It changed the way I look at life and grief, so yes. Number 17 is Felix Ever After by Case and Callender. This book came out, I don't know when. I want to say a couple years ago, but my view on time is very wonky right now. But this is a YA book. I picked it up because a lot of people really are obsessed with it, and also like it's written by a trans author, and I want to read more about trans people. And it's like not always like a happy-go-lucky book, but I absolutely felt like it was a joyous queer book. Like it's written about a Pride Month and it's just like, it's about, I don't know. It felt more like a college story than a high school story, which is I think why I enjoyed it so much. But the characters are so strong. The writing is incredible. It's really, really fun. It has its dark moments, obviously, but I appreciate that it doesn't shy away from that. And I think everybody should read this book. It's really, really beautiful. Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. So this book was hot. It was very highly talked about in recent months/years. When did it come out? I don't remember. And I obviously wanted to pick it up because I'm a good white person. It's really, really powerful because it's a story about race. And so it talks about how like white women specifically like hoard a lot of power over Black people and how they think they're doing the right thing in helping out Black people or supporting Black people when in the long run they're actually doing more harm than good. And so it deals a lot with that sort of thing. The reason I enjoyed it, while that was great, and I think it's important for me as a white person to like read about Black experiences and understand this type of stuff. Personally, like I really actually related to the main character because she's 25. And so as much as this story is about race, it's also about being in your mid-20s and not knowing what you want to do with your life and feeling shame for being in the service industry when like you should have a real career and like you can't afford health insurance and all this stuff. And so it was really powerful because it's about race, and I do want to learn more about that sort of thing as a white person. But more than that, like it just is a relatable story. As a mid-20s girl, I was really feeling for Amira. Like it just was really hard to read. Also because I was reading this right about the time when I was getting my own health insurance and I had turned 26. And so like it was just like a lot to deal with that I was like, she is trying to get health insurance and I got health insurance. And anyways, you know, it's fine. Everything's fine. Number 15. This is actually, I'm so mad that I don't own this book yet. It's on my list of things to buy. But like this book is probably my favorite nonfiction book that I read all year. And I knew I was going to like it because I've been meaning to read it for years, but oh my God. It's called Ace by Angela Chen, and this is a nonfiction book about asexuality. And mostly it's just a collection of like interviews and essays with other ace people of various backgrounds. And as somebody who is asexual, it was really, really powerful, number one, to read a book about ace people, but number two, to feel like I was learning things about asexuality. Because even though I know like a decent amount of asexuality and like I am ace, so like I have my own experiences, it's really interesting interesting to read about other experiences from people of different backgrounds. And also one of my favorite things about it is some of the book, I think it was like a chapter or something, talked a lot about being aromantic in relation to being ace. And so like for me, I've been going through a lot in the last 12 months, like figuring out my romantic tendencies and like what it means to be aro ace. And so like getting to read more about that, and like platonic relationships versus romantic relationships, like it just was so eye-opening to me. And I think it's a book that I want everybody to read, regardless of your sexuality. I think straight people should read it. I think gay and bi and pan people need to read it. I think like ace people should read it, obviously. But it just really provided me with a lot of information that I was searching for. And also on top of that, it just is like really well written, and I really would trust Angela Chen with my life. I love her so much. It's funny because I said Monstrous was like my favorite graphic novel series, and it is, but it also like ranked way down below this graphic novel series. And so I stand by what I said, but also like Fence. Can we talk about Fence by C.S. Pacat? Holy shit. So Fence is a graphic novel series that I believe is over. I got into it just this year, but it's been done, I believe, for a couple of years now, maybe. And it's a story about a high school fencing team, and it's so good. It's so good. It's like technically not gay in the comics, but I also want to point out that there is like a spin-off novelization series that is not written by C.S. Pacat. It's written, I believe, by, can't remember her name. It doesn't really matter. It's written by somebody else. So it's definitely not the same, but like in the novelization, it is definitely gay, and there are undertones of homosexuality in the comic books. The comic books are the best. I love them. They're so beautiful. Just like made me feel so many things. But I did read the first novelization, and while it was one of the worst written books I've ever read in my life, the joy that I got from reading that book, unparalleled. The serotonin I received, so much of it. But when I tell you it's one of the worst written books I've ever read, and I've read a lot of books, but Fence, obsessed with it. I think everyone should read it. It's super fun. If you like All for the Game, definitely pick it up. Number 13, Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. Holy shit. I read both books in the Gideon series, Gideon the Ninth, Harrow the Ninth. I will say, Harrow the Ninth was one of the weirdest books I think I've read in my whole life. I only gave it 3 stars for that reason, because it's a complicated book. It doesn't make any sense. It's very long. It was just like a very difficult reading experience for me. However, Gideon the Ninth, one of the best books I've ever read. It is the funniest thing ever. I don't like sci-fi, and that book changed the game. It was so good. I am so excited to read the next book in the series next fall. Overall, just like such a cool world. I am so pumped about where it's going. If you don't know, this is the Necromancer Lesbians in Space. It came out a couple years ago, and it's like, it has a huge cult following. The people I know who've read it, like, are in it. It's like the thing, you know? So if you haven't picked it up yet, I would definitely recommend reading it. The second one is a lot, but once you get through it, like, it will change your life. Yeah. Number 12. Who thought that this was going to happen? Not me. Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is the most recent Taylor Jenkins Reid book. If you know my history, I have a very mixed relationship with Taylor Jenkins Reid. I think she's a really cool person. I love her concepts. I think the execution is just like not what I want personally. And so like I've had a really hard time connecting with her books in the past. However, this one, when I went into it, everybody was like, oh, Jenna, you're not going to like that. That's not going to be your jam. You're not going to enjoy that. And I don't know if it's because people said that or like what, but like literally this is my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid book. It is so good. And I think that's because it's about family. So it has like dual timelines. It starts in the 80s. And so the main storyline is in like 1983, I think. It's set at a party, and it follows these siblings as they're at this party, but we also get to see them grow up and see their parents fall in love in like the 60s, I think. And it's just like, I love books about family and relationships with siblings and parents and whatever. And I think for me, this book was just so good because there were so many things that I related to. And it also is something that will definitely be inspiring a future story for me. It's something that I just like, it really hit a nerve. And I still think about it sometimes. It's that good. I love it. It's my favorite book by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Who'd have thought? Number 11. At Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. I read two books in the Brown Sisters series this year for the first time. Oddly enough, it wasn't the second and third one. It was the first and the third one. I read Dani Brown last year, and this year I decided to read the full series, and so I did, and this one just came out within the last couple of months. 6 months? When did this come out? I don't remember. This is my favorite book in the series. It is so beautiful, so wonderful. It's about our girl Eve, who realizes that she needs to go out and get a job, and she ends up accidentally working at this bed and breakfast and kind of maybe sort of falling in love with her enemy boss guy dude. And it is just like the cutest little romance book, but my favorite thing about the Brown Sisters series is even though it's romance, like there is this underlying deeper exploration of like mental health and disabilities and just like so many really cool things that I feel like aren't talked about enough. And also Eve Brown is like mid-20s, which is like right where I'm at. And so it just was like really fun and relatable. And maybe I cried. I honestly don't remember, but I feel like I cried a little bit because it just is that good. I love the Brown Sisters. They're so great. Speaking of crying, number 10 on our list is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie mckessey. Yes. So this is a children's book, if you're unaware. And was this book recommended to me by Chris Hemsworth? Yes. Did he post about it like 2 years ago and I have tried to read it ever since? Yes. This is the book that I read right after A Little Life, and I will be talking about A Little Life. But A Little Life made me so emotionally unhinged that the next book that I read after it, I was like, it has to be easy and it has to be comforting. And what is more comforting and easy than a children's book? And I was like, cool, like it'll be fine. It's a children's book. I don't know. First of all, it is a beautiful children's book. If you've never picked it up before, it is just like so comforting, so beautiful. But like the content is about friendship and loving yourself and like crying. And so literally like the day after I finished A Little Life, I was like, cool, wipe my tears. I'm ready to go. Next book. And then I picked this up and I was like, cool. And then I just like cried some more. So it's so beautifully written. And I think it's something that everyone should pick up. Even though it's a children's book, it just has a lot of important life lessons. And I think everybody should read it. Number 9 is the Poppy War series by R.F. Kuang. What the fuck? I will say, I believe my favorite book in the series is the second one, The Dragon Republic. Probably one of the best sequels I've ever read in my whole life. Absolutely obsessed with it. If you don't know, the Poppy War series is a high military fantasy series, and it is fantasy, but I would say for a majority of the first half of the series, it doesn't really feel like fantasy. It just feels like a military book, which is to say it was kind of difficult to follow along with everything, and I think you have to be really in the mood for it, but it is so well written. It is based loosely on some Chinese war. I can't remember the entire context of it, but it is like based on real events, but it's just like one of the best series ever. And the fact that R.F. Kuang was like in college writing this is just like absolutely mind-blowing. But I love it so much. It's about our main girl Rin, and she starts out in this lowly village and she ends up testing out of her village and going to live in like this big, I don't know if it's the capital city. She goes to this big city where she is learning military strategy, and eventually there is a big war and there are multiple fights and battles, and it's really just like all about like the military, and it is wonderful. Like it is one of the darkest fantasy series you'll pick up. It's really difficult to read at times. There's a lot of really dark shit that happens. But like truly one of the best series you can read. I am so happy that I picked it up because it'll change the way you look at life, honestly. Number 8, I would say pretty much from here on up are like my favorites. Like These are the books that I think about every day of my life. And first on this list is Jade City by Fonda Lee. I have read the first 2 books in the series. I was supposed to read Jade Legacy months ago, and it just hasn't happened yet, but I'm saving it for a rainy day. But literally, Jade City, I had heard so many things about it, and everybody told me to read it. It's basically like an Asian Godfather with magic, is kind of how I would describe it. And so like that premise alone, I was like, yeah, that sounds like it'd be pretty good. But like when I tell you this series, the plot twists get me every time. The characters, freaking incredible. Like the magic system that Fonda Lee has created is so genius. I just cannot stop thinking about my people. Like I'm thinking about Hilo. I'm thinking about Shay. I love them. I'm thinking about Andon. Like I just love them so much. And my other favorite thing about this series is that it's like, it has such a wide scope. Like normally I feel like with fantasy series, it kind of takes place over the course of a year, maybe 2 or 3. This series literally takes place over decades. The first book, not so much, but the second book we jumped like 4 or 5 years. I believe in Jade Legacy, you get to jump way more. But you really get to watch these characters grow up in a trilogy, and it's just really, really well done, and I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. Number 7, Lore Olympus. When I tell you, it was New Year's Day, literally like 12:15 a.m., first day of the year, right after New Year's Eve, I sat down to go to bed, opened the Webtoons app, and started reading Lore Olympus. It is the first thing that I read in the new year, and I have been keeping up with it since then. I think I'm a couple episodes behind right now, but like Lore Olympus, one of the best Webtoons I've ever read in my life. It's just like so addictive. It's basically, it's the story of like the Greek gods, but like kind of modernized, and also like not the story of the Greek gods. Because obviously it's like its own plot, but it follows the story of Hades and Persephone as they kind of like fall in love, and like it's so good. It's so good. It's like kind of romance, kind of fantasy. It's just like really, really awesome and relatable and funny, and like the art is beautiful. It just like, I cannot express to you how much I love Lore Olympus. If you haven't picked it up yet, definitely go do that. I think it came out in print a couple of months ago. So you can buy the physical copy, but it's online for free on Webtoons. So I've made a whole video about this, and I probably will make more videos about this in the future. But I just want to say, I was on the train way before most of you guys on Book Talk. Just like throwing that out there. The Alice 6 by Olivia Blake. This is one of my favorite books of all time. It has gotten so big in recent months that it now is being published by Tor. It also has a confirmed trilogy. It just got bought, I think, by Amazon, so that it's being turned into a TV show. Like quite literally in the time that I found it on Tumblr and picked it up myself, it is now like a global, like it's a phenomenon. It's a thing that everybody knows about. And I really did find it on Tumblr just like out of the blue randomly. This book is queer, it's dark academia, it is college aged, like it's so good. It's so good. It has magic, it's like sexy as fuck. It's just like everything you want out of a dark academia book, in my opinion. And I am so excited that we get a trilogy for sure now, because when I picked it up, she was like, I don't know if we're even gonna get a trilogy. It might just have to be 2 books. I'm not really sure. And now it's just like thriving in the wild. And I am so excited about that. But I would highly recommend this. My goal next year is to pick up more Olivia Blake because I love her so much. But I just like this book. This is the book that started it all. All right, folks, top 5. So number 5 is a series. It is the Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams. I read 4 books in this series this year. This is probably my favorite, but it kind of jumps back and forth between this and the third one. If you haven't picked up the Bromance Book Club series, what are you doing with your life? Now, hear me out. It is aggressively straight in some ways. My favorite thing about this series is that it really looks at masculinity in a way that you wouldn't expect. It's written by a woman, so that's probably why. But it's about this group of jock men who basically read romance books together as a group in order to save their relationships and their marriages and to find love and all these things. And so it's really, really beautiful, honestly. It's the funniest writing I think I've read in years. But like my favorite thing about it is it really does just like put masculinity in this new light, and it really emphasizes like being emotional, being vulnerable, treating your women right, you know, all these things that like are so contrary to the hegemonic masculinity that is like so normal in society today. And just like overall, it's just like really cute and fun. And so if you're looking for some serotonin, highly recommend the series. It's so good. I cannot tell you how much I love it. And we get a 5th book with Colton next year, and I'm so excited. Number 4 on our list fucked me up, if I'm honest. I read it around my birthday, and I cried, and I still think about it all the time, and it is Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. This is the man who wrote All the Light We Cannot See, which I haven't read, but I picked this one up because it kind of felt like, it was described as kind of like meta literature or Gothic literature, if you know kind of that kind of vibe. That's what this book is. It is really complex because it's set over numerous timelines, but it follows like this one story as it shows up in different parts of history. And so there's like 1400s Constantinople, there's like the 50s, I think, there's one day in February 2020, and then there's like a future date that's like 100, 200 years in the future. All of these characters from different time periods all know this one story. And so this one story shows up throughout history, and it changes all of these people's lives. And it's kind of the power of storytelling and how books influence us, and how we can use these words to kind of like influence other people. And all that to say, that's like exactly my shit. And so naturally it was something that I was obsessed with. I was a little shocked because there is a little bit of historical fiction in this since it's set in Constantinople. And it's not a book for everybody by any means, but like, quite literally, it just like changed the way that I look at life. It has to do a lot with climate change and human interaction, humanity. It's just like truly an incredible book, and I think everybody should pick it up, even though not everybody's gonna like it, because I love it. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I think these top 3 books are kind of interchangeable in some ways. They're all kind of number 1 for me, but I did have to rank them, and so this is how they are ranked. Number 3 on our list, People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. It's actually kind of wild to me that this is a book from 2021. I read it in January, and then I read it again in May, and it just feels like it's been a part of my life for like a decade now. So that's on time being an illusion, but basically this is like my favorite Emily Henry book. It's about these 2 friends who met when they were in college, and pretty much every summer they go on like an annual vacation together. And eventually they fall in love, and it becomes very complicated and messy. And they're like really kind of exploring that late 20s crisis of like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Not sure. And also like they're in love, and it's romance, and it's funny as hell, and it makes you cry, and it's just like, oh, some people don't like it as much as they like Beach Read, but those people just like don't have a brain cell, because like this is just like God tier. This is Emily Henry at her best. It's so incredible. And the audiobook is wonderful. I love Alex Nelson. I can't remember his name. Anyway, obsessed with this book, changed my life. I think about it every goddamn day. Number 2, I also read in January, and it may or may not have given me a panic attack. Not really sure. It just was like everything I wanted and also nothing that I wanted, which is to say I was very sad. It's The Mask Falling by Samantha Shannon. This is the 4th book in the Bone Season series. I marathoned the Bone Season for a reread this year, and it just, once again, changed my life. Obsessed with it so much. But this is the newest installment that came out this year, and it broke me, if I'm being honest. It is the best book in the series thus far. It just is really, really wonderful because it's set in Paris, and it follows Paige and Warden just like being domestic, and it's so perfect. And then like the end, again, gave me a panic attack, I believe. I've had a lot of freakouts when I've read books before. Like I've cried, I've screamed, like, totally get it. But there was like a different feeling in me when I was reading the end of this book that I started like hyperventilating, and I just like was having a really bad time in a good way. Like it was fun, but also like I kind of wanted to die. So anyways, in conclusion, this book broke me, and I am eagerly awaiting the next book in the series, which we probably won't get until 2023. But it's fine. I'm fine. If you haven't picked up this series yet, you need to pick it up ASAP. It's one of my all-time favorite series. This book in particular has Demi and Pan reps, so if you're looking for that, pick it up. And if you want to cry, this will make you cry. And one more time, while we're talking about crying, I have to talk about the book that ruined my whole life, A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I've made a video about this book, so if you want to hear like my full thoughts, I have talked about it. You can go see it. The reason it's number one is because it truly, like, it is one of my favorite books of all time. I think when you read A Little Life, either like it touches you and like it's the best, or it touches you and you're like, cool, I can never think about that ever again. I don't want that. Or you hate it. There's really no in between. For me personally, I just like felt so connected to this book in so many different ways. And I think it really did make me look at my life and the way that I was living and like reassess everything about everything in general. I will say, after I picked this up, I'm pretty sure this is the reason that my year was as bad as it was. Not necessarily because of the book, but like because of the book. I think it's because of the book. I cried. I had one of the biggest breakdowns I've ever had in my whole life. And I just like cannot express to you how fucked up I was because of this. But also like best book of the year, am I right, ladies? That was a lot. I read so many books this year. And I just like, my mind is blown. Like truly it feels like a different person read all those books, but like I did read them and they were great. Those are my favorite books of 2021. If you read any of them and you want to like give me your thoughts, I would love to hear what you read this year. Give me all of the things. What were your favorites? What books did you hate? I want to talk to you. Let me know in the comments. How was your reading year? How did it go? I have no idea what's going to happen next year. I have no idea what I'm going to read. I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing, but I am very grateful that you guys are still here, still listening to me rant about books. I appreciate you so much, and hopefully I will see you in the new year.